Syracuse, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Syracuse, and Phil Syracuse. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for this sponsorship. You'll have to do a few things in order to participate. Go on over to the YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio or International Public Radio. You can also go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, Twitch, SoundCloud, and Podbean. Go over to our show, our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio. Get in if you haven't, and if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. So Trish Mo is she'll be in soon, but I'm just going to introduce her. So when she comes up, we'll let her right in. So please welcome our very own network host, Trisha Mo, to the show. From The Missing Piece. Trish has a long history of supernatural experiences in her own life, including near-death experiences and mediumship from a very young age. We were on her show a few weeks back, and our house took over. So tonight we want to really dig in to her personal story. And don't forget to catch her show right after our show every Monday night at 8 CST and 9 EST on The Missing Piece. So when she comes up, we're going to pull her right in.
Awesome. And we just want to talk about last week's guest, how impressed we were.
Yes.
And, I have to say this to the listener out there. However you're listening to this show, you don't have to try to communicate with the other side because, quite frankly, from my research and other people, they're listening, whether we expect it or not. And last week we were doing a radio show, and Erica, right?
Yes, and so many times when we have these like really talented mediums on our show, the house kind of like takes over, and that's kind of like what happened last week, and that's happened many times.
Yeah, I mean, she's looking behind me because this is also a live stream, and she sees a shadow behind me, and then on the right side of me, and she's giving me details that, quite frankly, no one would have known.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting and intriguing at the same time. I was thrown back. I mean, to know some of the information.
She was.
And then it goes to show you that the spirit world is always watching and listening, and it's up to us to have an open mind to listen to that side. And communication is possible. You don't need paranormal equipment. You can just use your own feelings and vibration. How do you usually feel spirits?
I can feel them around me, but I try to block them out. You have to have some kind of like a boundary of you have to just shut it down sometimes, or else they'll be bothering you all day. But I can definitely feel when they're around me.
And what do you feel?
A heaviness, a heaviness. I see a lot of stuff from the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
Actually, this happens like every day. I just don't really talk about them.
Yeah.
I try to keep some stuff to myself, or else you really go.
And it's always at the corner of the eye, right? You don't see it face on.
Oh, for me, it's always in the corner of my eye.
No, that
happens. Actually happened today too.
What happened?
I was in the dining room, and then I just seen something in the kitchen really fast.
In the dining room or in the kitchen?
I was in the dining room, and then I seen something in the kitchen, kind of like the hallway where the laundry room is.
Huh. What did it look like?
I don't know, because it was so fast. It was like a shadow, but it's kind of like when one of the kids just like dodge by. You know what I mean? Like really fast. But like when you see something like really, really fast, but you can't make it out.
Yeah.
I hate that.
So it's funny that you said that, because in that one particular area, I believe is like a portal. I could be sitting at the kitchen and I see something in that same exact spot.
Yeah, that was my experience today.
And I'm looking, like, I don't see it straight on. It's always by the corner of the eye. And then I get the cell phone and I try to record that spot as I'm looking the other way, just to try to trick the spirit, so I can capture the spirit on my cell phone. But they're outsmarting me, because I see nothing when I play it back. And then you're like, is it me? Why is this happen at the corner
or
of the eye?
you never have the phone when you want it, because that's what
I always have my phone.
Yeah, I know that, but I don't, and that happens to me all the time.
It's fascinating, but the good news is that, you know, that connection with loved ones, that crossover, we always look for validation in the signs, and you just have to be open to it. And I can promise you that they're always watching and listening, and they try to help us.
Yeah.
And
wow, my voice is really bad.
What about in the bed? Like, you would feel like an imprint in the bed?
Yes.
Something go down?
Yes. I think that, you know what, you keep hitting things on the nail. I think that actually happened yesterday.
Well, a lot of things have been happening to you.
I kind of, you know how I am. I really don't like to talk about these things, but you're pulling it out of me. But I think it did happen yesterday.
What did you feel?
Something on the bed, like something
sitting on the bed.
Yeah, but no one was there. You weren't there. Nobody was there.
Yeah, that's happened to me quite a few times.
And
again, you know what? We could say, well, it's scary, but it could be a loved one.
It could be.
Just sitting down and saying, you know,
not
in their own way, hey, I'm here. I'm listening to you. I feel
you.
you.
Very true.
Right?
It's very true. Not everything is, you know, what.
I don't think everything is scary in a way, because, you know, there's signs, and we've dealt with many people from around the world, and we have abilities that sometimes it's just one that wants to talk to you, a spirit. And maybe they didn't cross over yet, or maybe some people believe that they can come back and forth from another dimension to our dimension, which leads me to something I want to talk about as we're waiting for our guest. Is tomorrow's a big UFO day in the world, May 17th, where the big wigs will be talking about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, let's see if they spill some of the beans. Yeah. We know they're real. We know UFOs do exist, and we know that a lot of things can be ruled out as just optical illusions and things to that nature. But we also know that there's truth behind some of these things.
We know that, and they know that too. But do you really think they're going to say
I think
what you want them to say?
Right. And I think there's a lot of pressure right now on UFOs. Is a big thing right now. I mean, it's on the news. If you type in CNN, UFOs, Fox News, NBC, it's everywhere right now. Everyone's got a cell phone. Everyone's got these devices where, you know, you can record these through telescopes, and so they can't say, well, everything's an airplane, everything's a helicopter, or a solar flare, or things to that nature, or a drone. There's things out there that are unexplained. Have you ever had an encounter?
Never. Not that I know of, no. Have you?
I've had a couple of encounters. If I had to narrow it down, I would say they're way, way far advanced, obviously. I'm talking maybe hundreds of thousands of years way ahead of us. And I believe most of them aren't malevolent, because if they were, I don't think we'd be here right now.
This is with that kind of,
with that technology, right?
I definitely agree with
you. I mean, if you could fly a saucer with the speeds up and down in the ocean, out of the ocean, then, I mean, Earth wouldn't be a problem to.
Well, I do have a question though. Why do they give us back?
Give what back?
Well, you know, when you're abducted, I mean, there's been so many people that have come forward. Why do they give us back?
Well, when I'm abducted, I want to say, keep me.
That's what I'm saying.
Just feed me a few times a day with the best courses, and Let's see what we have up here in space.
There she is.
And there's our guest popping in right now. Hi. And
Oh,
we can't hear our
no.
guest. So the good news is the guest is in, and the bad news is we can't hear the guest. So
wait, let me shoot her real quick.
maybe I don't know if she can hear us.
Wait, I'm gonna text her right now.
I don't know if there's a mute
button. She looks really
button.
good.
Yeah, there's a mute button that maybe, or a computer error. But you look good visually, but we just need to hear you.
Let me see. Well, as I was saying, yeah.
So everybody, yeah, Trish Mo is active. We're just trying to get some audio going with that, but there's nothing coming through. So until we get the audio, UFOs are real.
Yeah. Like I was saying, though, why do they give us
Well, look at Travis Walker, and there's all these cases, Betty and Barney Hill, who have these experiences.
And they to the day they died, they kept up with their story.
The stories are real. It's true. This is not make-believe. And I think it's time for the big wigs to come forward and clean and say, hey, you know what? We're not alone. And whether humanity can accept it or not, I can accept it. Are you there? No. So it's just the thing of, I think the thing they keep it on the wraps is they don't know if people can accept it. I know, because it does go against
cause a lot of problems.
The boundaries of religion, right? We're never taught this in any kind of school or religion, that we're not the only ones. We're supposed to be the only ones, but I would never believe that. The universe is tremendous, right? We're a scratch on the surface. So what would people think? And then would people think, well, you've lied to us so long, so why would I even believe you? Yeah. What anything else you have to say? I mean, if you've never told us in what, 50, 60 years. At this point, since Roswell,
I would they should just be honest. That's my opinion. I mean, it is what it is. Just be honest, and there's definitely going to be a lot of backlash.
Yeah, I would be honest, and I would,
got to deal with it.
Give us the alien's email address, so if we want to go out somewhere and just fly away.
Yeah,
take me away from my kids.
I was just gonna say, like, be honest. You know, we tell our kids this. You know, we lie and it's like tell the truth.
Do they charge admission to be picked up? It's like an Uber, except for Uber, pull up in front of your door. It's a UFO, right? The Jetsons. It's funny. Yeah. But this is this is what we're coming into.
Don't make me laugh.
This is so Trish Mo, can you hear us? Wave. You can hear us, but there's no audio coming from your end.
Maybe if she signs off, it comes
back. I would try to sign off and sign back on with and see what's going on over there on your end. Yeah. And in the meantime,
we should hear us.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on the show. You know, UFO is a big topic. It's tremendous. And I talk about this to the listener because also a lot of the paranormal investigations that take place, there's
always some type of...
Yeah, you have that ghost haunting, and then sometimes you have things that aren't ghostly. It's like, where is this coming from? These strange voices.
It's different.
I think some of the equipment that's out there that some of these people have put together are picking up different frequencies and from other places that it's possible.
Yes.
It's definitely possible. And then there's time lapses.
Oh, yeah.
Now, here at the Horsefly Chronicles home in Easton, Pennsylvania, when we had previous investigations, there were a couple, 2-3 times in the last 7 years where there was a time lapse of like an hour and a half that is unaccounted for.
And tell the listeners how you know that it was unaccounted for.
Well, we have surveillance cameras, and I remember looking back, and there was an hour and a half gone with the paranormal investigator alone in the living room at one occasion. And then she reappeared, and I thought it was a glitch, right? It's the first thing we would think. It's a camera glitch. The camera shut down and goes back on again. But after speaking to these people, doing the investigations, it just comes to be that they get lost. They get confused. There's always a state of confusion, and their equilibrium balance, they get off-centered. You know, the movie The Fourth Kind, for example, it can go two ways, that movie.
You always talk about these movies, and then I always want to watch them.
I think it was an awesome movie, whether you believe the movie or you don't. I think it's an awesome movie. And the movie speaks volume because what you're hearing come through of these people that were abducted are, it sounds evil. Some of these voices sound pure evil. And you say, well, it's a demon, right? But they're not. So it is possible that some of these alien races that are out there can manipulate the minds of human beings
Yes.
and control, as well as take the person, abduct the person, probe, like they do these experiments, right?
Mhm.
To look at the movie Fire in the Sky. They do these
Yes.
experiments to the people and they come back because they don't want to harm them. Fascinating.
It's really fascinating.
And I think that these stories should be taken more seriously and not mocked and not taken with a grain of salt, because there are a lot of professional people, even within the government,
There is a lot of
that
educated
come forward and say,
people
wait a second.
that, it's too much evidence
Look,
to like not believe.
Obama was on one of the talk shows like a year ago, and he was asked that question. Are we alone? They asked him on TV,
And what did
are
he
we
say?
alone? He's like, look, he goes, there's some things we can't explain out there. There's crafts that move in a way that we don't have that kind of experience, or things in our military that G-force would just kill you. And we don't believe it to be true that other countries would even have such a thing, because you couldn't even sit and manipulate this thing,
Mhm.
this craft. So someone's flying it, or is it done by some kind of control device?
I'm gonna go with someone's.
I would definitely say
Definitely
someone's flying it,
Something is flying it.
right?
Yes.
But is it also possible, the way we have remote controls and drones out there now? I mean, there's so many advanced drones. There's also a possibility that some of these things can also be unmanned and controlled by something else, just to seek us out and see what we're doing.
Spy on us.
I think
Basically what's going on.
Yeah, and there was also a case where over military ships, they took out the power of our nukes. They shut it down
When?
back years ago. And our military caught this on camera. They seen the thing, but then something happened with our nukes. And you got to question now. Well, first of all, if it was another country, we'd be in trouble a long time ago, period. But I don't believe that to be true. I believe it to be other beings, and they're probably saying, in their own way, this is not good.
Yeah.
If you need to save mankind, not destroy it, because we destroy everything.
We do.
And why would they come here and walk the same street with us? Because we destroy everything anyway.
We've had guests on the show that have said that they actually do walk with us, and they're living down here with us. What do you think about that?
I find that to be interesting. There's probably some truth behind that. That maybe you can identify some of these things. They fit into the population.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. What's that movie that we've seen?
Maybe you're an alien.
Yeah, that movie that we've seen that we like, with the kids in the school, and then they get abducted and they get like taken over.
No, I don't remember. Can't remember the name.
It was a good movie. And there was the queen alien, and they had to kill her at the end, but no one knew because everybody looked the same.
I can't think of what you're talking about. I hate when that happens.
Yeah, but it was a great movie. There's so many movies out there.
There they are. Yeah.
Communion was another one.
Oh, yes.
Now, Communion can be boring when you watch it, because it does drag, but the storyline is really good.
We're going to be looking for these movies later.
Upstate New York, they have a cabin. They're leaving from New York City, and he has an experience with other beings that are unexplainable. That's also, I believe, based on recorded and documented events that these people come forward and say, no, this is true.
Yeah.
Right.
This is very true.
And then we go to the cattle that are dissected, and there's no blood on the ground. How do you explain
You
that?
can't.
There's no blood
Mm-mm.
on the ground, and they're perfectly. It's like a laser cuts them apart, and they're
Yeah, that's terrible. Yep.
So now you have to say to yourself, how is that even possible?
And why cattle?
Well,
Like, it's just really strange.
yeah. But I'm looking forward anyway to the listener out there. I'm looking forward to what they say tomorrow. It will be live. I believe it's going to be live. They said you can watch it, and there's going to be a lot of testimony and people coming forward.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
But
most definitely.
I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be fluff put to it.
Lots of fluff.
Well, we think it's this, and we'll get back to you in 6 months with more information. And then 6 months passes by,
and you'll be waiting 6 months.
And then it just drags on and on and on. Instead of them just saying, "Hey, I think we're not alone." Period.
Just
we're
come
not
out
alone.
And say it already.
So many people within the paranormal community, MUFON, and people that we've had on our show, professionals, have said, "Look, whether you believe or choose not to believe, the truth is we're not alone. There's just too much evidence."
Yeah. Yes.
And it gets filtered down and polluted through one person changes the story of another, and before you know it, what was really happening turns into a prefabricated story, and then it gets diminished into why you even think it's such a silly thing that these things do exist.
Hello?
Trish Mo, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right, we have our guest on here. So we gave you an introduction. We talked about aliens. We were not abducted yet. So Trish, talk to us and let everybody know who you are.
Well, so first of all, the crazy thing, I messaged this that when I've restarted my computer a few hours ago, everything was working great, and literally right when it had to have been right when you messaged me the link, all of a sudden my screen goes black, and the only thing that popped up was a screen that said Owl Eyes Portal.
What?
And
I knew you were gonna get blamed for this.
I'm like, well, Owl Eyes Portal, huh? That's
That's crazy.
alien like, but and then nothing worked.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that happens.
We've been there. It sucks.
Yes.
So tell the listener about yourself and all that, like take us from the beginning of your story, your experiences. You have your own show. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. And how did you get into paranormal?
Gosh. I was born into it. I actually when I was born, I chirped like a bird, actually, and I had my parents thought something was wrong with me, and my mom took me to the doctor, and they said that's actually how she cries, and I didn't actually learn how to cry until I was like 1.5, maybe, from my sister, actually, and then I learned later, and I always had these weird all these dreams, like these almost past life type dreams, because I would explain to my parents from the time I could talk, probably 2 or 3 years old, from the time I could talk, about one time I told them in detail, like in very a very detailed story for a 2-year-old, how I was in a sword fight and I died. That I was a man, and I told them on this whole story how I died, and that happened a few times. So I wasn't just remembering one lifetime, I assume, because it was different storylines. And then of course I grew up in New Mexico. I was born outside of Roswell, and so that's weird enough as it is. There's my mom was born there the year of the crash, actually. So but I lived in the mountains, and I was on the border of Arizona and New Mexico. So I wasn't in the White Mountains. I was in the Gila Wilderness, and we saw a lot of. They used to test like the stealth fighter jets from White Sands, different planes and stuff that the military would use that nobody had ever seen before. They would test over our mountains, And so I remember that from when I was little. But up in the mountains, I was always going out in the woods, in the forest, and like communicating with animals and I would say elementals, I guess, because they're like little
Yeah.
fairy spirit or forest fairies and things like that. And my parents, of course, are like, yeah, they just don't have a lot of friends up here in the forest, so maybe it's her imaginary friends, or or maybe they thought I was crazy. I don't know.
Did anyone in your family have any type of gifts that you know of?
Um, well, I mean, I'm 40, so this was the 80s. It still wasn't talked about. It was really taboo. Um, and then it wasn't until I was much, much older. I mean, this was like a few years ago when my mom's like, "Oh, yeah, I remember, your grandpa doing like water dousing, all kinds of things." And I was like,
Now you tell me?
Right, like what? And she would talk about, my great grandparents who I never met and things like that doing the same thing. But of course, like I said, the 80s was still really pretty taboo. So I
Yeah.
yeah, and I would see spirits in my home all the time. We were on I have a native background as well, but we were also on um native ground and old burial grounds and stuff. So um I remember, and I couldn't remember for the longest time whether some of these people were real in my life or like if they were spirits,
Mhm.
because to me spirits looked like a real person. I mean, they still do. A lot of them come through that, just like somebody who's living. Um, and so I remembered a lot of the elders from a tribe that was up in the mountains just telling me stories from like the 1800s or 1700s, which was really, I mean, I remember those to this day. And so it yeah, it kind of developed to when I was older. I had a few near death experiences. I was struck by lightning, I was electrocuted,
Oh,
I had two
wow.
heart attacks, and
Well, tell us
I
about the near-death
Oh
experience. I
my
mean,
goodness.
one of them, or maybe two, or maybe all of them. Did you leave your body?
I did well, and they were all different. So one, the I was only 12, I believe. The lightning incident, and that was at summer camp. Um, and that one, I didn't really. It was very traumatic because I was riding a horse at the time. So I think the entire, and it was very quick. So it was very different than. Um, I don't know that one. I don't know that I actually. Um, died during that one, but I know I was near death because I remember seeing the horse and me on it, and I wasn't in my body. But I never really knew if that was just almost out of shock that I left my body. You know what I mean? But I wasn't like actually dead that time. Um,
It's scary.
and then and then and then when I had my son, I flatlined. I had general anesthesia, and um, that time I did. I mean, it took them like 8 or 10 hours to finally stabilize me. So I think I flatlined a few times, and I was 100% aware that I wasn't in my body that time. And that time, I actually just went to like in the I think it was in the Matrix, where he goes to the room of just nothingness, like just nothing, and no void of all like senses, no sound, feeling, nothing, just a white room. And but it didn't feel like I was there as long as I'm sure I was unconscious. Um but
Wow.
I was very aware I wasn't in my body.
So they
Um
were all different. You
mhm.
experienced something different every time.
Have you ever went through a tunnel?
Mm-mm. The last one I had was 4 years ago. I'm gonna say I had a heart attack, and I had these ceilings in my house. I had really high ceilings. They're almost 20-foot high ceilings. And right before the heart attack, which again, this brings up a different question. I see this giant. It was very bright, so it almost looked like metal light type, object. But it looked like it was a giant, almost person with wings.
Wow.
And I've heard of that before and stuff. And it was right after that showed up that I had the heart attack. And in that moment, my life went backwards. Every single, major memories in my life,
Wow.
almost like a projector screen. And it was very fast, but it was at the same time, it was very comprehensible. It wasn't like I knew what was going on then as well. And when I came to then, I was like, did that thing cause the heart attack, or did it save me? I don't know. So
Well, you know what? That's interesting. I think that that is interesting. Did it give you a heart attack or did it save
right.
you? But if it didn't, that's a tough one.
Like, did it mean to you know what I mean? Because sometimes I've heard this a lot, that and I can 100% see how it happens, that a lot of people, even experiencers, abductees, a lot of extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings or even UFOs have so much energy, like literal electricity,
Oh, yeah.
coming from them. So a lot of the time when people are knocked out or whatever, or have heart problems, it is caused by those things. But I don't think it's intentional. I didn't feel like this thing was had any ill intent, I guess, in comparison to some of my experiences. So
I would agree. I would definitely agree with that.
yeah, that was right before. Back then, I was very religious. I was very Christian, I guess, because I had developed Lyme disease and West Nile virus at the same time,
Oh, jeez.
and which can also cause heart problems.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was kind of getting better, so it didn't really make sense as much. But it was that spring, I was baptized, and man, if I had thought I've had, hauntings and stuff my entire life in every house I've ever lived in. And if I thought they were bad before that, they really got bad after I was baptized. So
Wow.
and so I had told my church, one day I was sitting in church and all of a sudden I see this man just bust through the door, like the entire scene changed like a movie in front of my eyes. And I saw this man bust through the door and start shooting people. And I completely freaked out. This has never happened to me. I didn't know what was going on. I told my church group afterwards. And at that time, it was like 10, 11 in the morning, and they're like, oh, okay, Trish, whatever, And it was later that afternoon that they announced the church shooting in Texas. That hadn't happened yet when I told them about this. And it was exactly as I said, and it was exactly the scene, that I said it would happen. And so
Chill. You actually had like a premonition.
Yeah.
Right?
Of a mass shooting. Yeah. And that was the first time that had happened. And I wasn't I had no idea what was going on. I had no everyone there thought I was crazy. I was kind of like outed from the church. Outed, ousted.
I was gonna ask, like, how did they take that? Because that is a Christian church.
Right.
How did they respond?
And here I thought, um, I don't know. I think it's scary. It's a scary thing, because when something like that happens and someone tells you it's going to happen, I would be freaked out too if I was on the other side, So I understood that. Um, but then all my friends, I lost all of my friends, my family. Nobody believed me of anything. I started seeing these wars of like angels and demons in the sky, literally in the clouds. I even had pictures of certain cloud shapes and stuff that 100%, like even other people, it wasn't like I was just seeing things. This was happening. And I didn't realize back then, because I had never studied it, that a lot of times clouds and such are used as part of different I don't know, it's been theorized that it's the government or extraterrestrials or something, you know what I mean, like creating these illusions. And so I didn't know what was going on. I started seeing natural disasters all over the world before they happen, like
Wow.
fires and floods, and I would write them down or describe them to people exactly, like to a T, and nobody believed me, And then they would happen like 6 months later, and then I started a lot of the spirits that would communicate with me ended up being like cold cases and such. So um, and from then I when was it? It was last year. I got my I became a certified clinical hypnotherapist. And it wasn't until then that I realized how the brain works as far as my ability to remember things, but also my ability to be hypnotized. And that's when I started remembering all of these different abduction incidents in my life.
Yeah.
So
It's so weird how like your mind can open up that way.
What do you mean
yeah.
abduction?
Oh gosh. I mean, I've been used. I from the time I was little, I'm a chimera. So I have multiple organs and two different DNAs and things like that. It's like my body's literally split down the middle. Um so I have extra heart valves and like 3 spleens and
Oh my goodness.
so um I know.
For
Um
real?
yeah.
You need to write a book.
Wow.
I know. um but I think 100%, there's the good and the bad, because I know that all these times I was abducted by bad things that actually did harm me, and
It's
like
never.
part of the hybridization programs and stuff like that were
We were just
traumatic.
talking about that. Um, how do you know that? What did they do to harm you that you're aware of?
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
was
I've
it?
had
She said.
Yeah.
yeah, I've had and I even had pictures. I would wake up, and this happened from the time I was little, um with bruises and burns and halfway across the room, and with nosebleeds and um all kinds of I mean, as an adult I was living in Denver one time, and um my makeup artist and I was modeling at the time, we were going to check in to a contracted photo shoot that I was going to, and all of a sudden, the next thing we both knew, like 4 or 5 hours later, we end up in the middle of the Utah desert. We
What?
lost. So a lot of these weren't even, it wasn't just me by myself. So I knew I wasn't just going crazy.
Okay. So, wow.
Um, so there were a lot of those. There were a lot of, um, lot of injuries on my wrists, on my ankles, on different
Yeah, and you can't explain where
right.
they're. Oof. Too bad.
Um to even different implants, that showed up randomly when I would get something X-rayed. And
We've heard about that before.
Well, let me ask you a
we've had
question.
people on.
When they see it in an X-ray, do they say, "Hey, what is this?"
Yeah,
Or
what
do
is
they
no,
just rule
it's
out
the
and
craziest thing. Like, it's just like Lyme disease. I felt like I was talking to the same people because they just get this blank look on their face, like, oh yeah, that's that's odd, and it's like they either just forget about it right away. It's so weird. Like, they don't even discuss it. They don't even. It's like, and maybe as doctors, I realize, like, with Lyme disease, especially in Kansas, they weren't allowed to treat it. They would lose their license if they even acknowledged it. And so, it may have changed now, but back then they couldn't. And so it might be something like that. Maybe they've been, I don't know, threatened, or who knows. Um, but at that time, I was living outside of a very large military base. Um, so, uh, the same thing with, like, being pregnant and stuff. And then all of a sudden, and doctors don't say anything about that either. They're like, oh, well, that's weird. You're not pregnant anymore. And I'm like, what? Like, what? Um, but there's too many times, there's too many people and too many times and too many other witnesses, and
Yeah.
it happens all across the world. So, you eventually they've got to start believing somebody, I would think.
I mean, that really makes you start wondering, like, what do these doctors see in our X-rays that they're not telling us? Do you ever think about that?
I think it's interesting.
I
Yeah.
mean,
But
I
like
don't know.
MRIs, there's people that we've had on our show
Yeah.
about MRIs that they showed pictures of there's things in them like chips. I don't know
Yeah.
how to
Right.
read it out in, but
Yeah.
again, the doctors don't pursue it.
This is why you
You
should
know, they
always
don't.
ask for your medical records and, your X-rays so you can look at them yourself.
Oh, that's another thing. And then, it started becoming hard to, after all of that happened, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to go back. Like, I want to know what happened. Because there's been things, even I had a surgery one time. They said my appendix had ruptured, but I go into surgery, and all of a sudden when I come out, they're like, oh, well, we had to remove your ovary also. And I'm like, what?
Are they even allowed to do that?
Well, and that's why I started thinking, I was pretty young. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say young. I was like in my mid-20s, but years later, when I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. It's like something made me just not think about that forever. And then when I go back and I tried to get my records, they said they no longer existed. So,
Oh man, I would have threw a fit.
yeah,
That's crazy.
it's crazy. Yeah. How, and the same with Lyme and everything else. When I would try to get my records, or even give blood, things like that. The last time they tested me, they were going to test me for Lyme again to see if it was active or not.
Yeah.
They took 13 vials of blood, and when I went to see the results, they said they said, we don't know what happened. The blood was missing. So
This is really interesting.
It's amazing.
Something is definitely going on with you that these doctors are withholding so much stuff from you.
yeah, I don't even go to the doctors now. I don't trust them. So that's when I started studying. I got my personal training certification and started studying herbal remedies and things like that. And I healed myself from Lyme disease because they told me I was going to die 4 years ago. So.
What? Wow.
Well, they said you can cure yourself, like the natives do. They're still out. There's still tribes out there.
Mm-hmm.
Then they do their own thing. The herbs, the trees, the plants.
I started spending time outdoors. I started painting again, doing art, the color therapy. I started I stopped eating anytime. I went back to basically a paleo diet, just meat and fruits and vegetables, and stopped listening to the narcissism of my doctors, I guess. They were telling me I was going to die. So,
Well, I'll tell you this much. You've been through a lot, but you definitely have an angel by your side.
oh, I mean, there's been so, I think I have numerous, that's the cool thing about being part, having the native background, the Irish background, the pagan roots, things like that, is I have so many, and especially all of the spirits that communicate with me. I have so many ancestors and spirit guides that help me have all the time, because it got to a point where I didn't have any people in my life. I had both my kids basically by myself, and any of my surgeries, I was always in the hospital by myself and stuff. And so um, I got used to trusting, I guess, spirits more than
And people.
the living. Yeah.
Mhm.
To an extent. And so and I think with mediums, that's kind of a big thing.
Yep. It's very,
We're yeah, and we're kind of neutral, in the spirit world, as far as
it's
they
very,
don't consider us like hunters of
Mhm.
or anything.
Yeah.
So
It's hard to trust people when you have all these gifts too. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's like that for me.
I know. I've been used for remote viewing by different the and that goes way back, especially with the military affiliations and stuff. And so yeah, you stop trusting people, and even with certain, I'm very picky. Like, I hardly ever investigate um with paranormal teams,
Yeah.
unless I know that they're not just going to exploit either the spirits or myself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want like, I'm not performing in a circus here. It's not.
Yeah. Have you
um
ever worked on any residential cases yourself, by yourself, or with anyone?
um not residential. It's like, and people around here call me like the social worker of spirits, because um I don't know why. It's like the really bad cases that affect entire towns or neighborhoods or something, so I seem to get involved in, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, tell us about your
I'll just have
show.
to.
Yeah.
Tell us
So
about
we're actually at the top of the hour,
yeah,
and you
I
have a
know.
show coming on in a few minutes,
Yeah.
so we're gonna have to
I
wrap
do.
this up.
I'm so sorry. Like I said, I don't think something wants me to talk to you all ever, because this happened last time
Why
too.
don't last time you remote viewed, you picked up things in our home,
Yep.
which were
Yes.
amazing. And today they made sure that you weren't going to pick up anything
Oh my
because
gosh, I know.
sure.
It's your house has the craziest energy. It's
It's different. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
It's a different.
We
I mean,
actually last week's guest was doing a remote view out of nowhere, and
it happened to her.
similar to
Just
things you were
yeah,
saying. So
it happened to her too. Just like the way it happened to you. It just like overpowers you, and
oh yeah. Yeah,
it's
I was prepared this time though for it. Like, I know now. They
yeah,
usually can only fool me once. But yeah, last time, like, everything was going great, and then all of it, well, not only did I also have computer problems, but yeah, it's like, it's all of a sudden I can always, well, for the most part, aside from when it was your house, control my channeling and stuff, and all of a sudden that day I couldn't. It just took over. And then the next night on chasing, we had the MUFON investigator from Pennsylvania come on and talk about. He's like, I had this dream about this mountain and lake, and I was like, no, go
yeah.
look at their picture, because I said something about that the night before.
Oh man.
wow.
Well, you're coming up next, so tell
Yeah.
us
So
about
tell
your.
everybody where they can find you and your show coming up next, because
Yeah.
it's 9 o'clock.
Yes. The Missing Piece with Trish Mo. It is on next from 8 to 10 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And mine's kind of a variety show. I don't always do paranormal um stuff as far as people, because my my whole thing in my, I guess, journey of healing and transformation, I think other people should get those stories out there as well. So I love anyone's story who has, you know, changed their life through something, even if it's through something traumatic or something, you know, week before last I had Ray Bishop who literally escaped prison in the UK, and then to so he could go back in and not be influenced by other people, and changed his life, you know, completely turned it around. um and so it's things like that. Tonight I am actually having
The Valley
and
House. Yeah,
yes,
I'm
that
excited.
place too, that place is like, that place doesn't want me to talk, any of us to talk ever about it, actually. And I've heard other people that have gone there say that. But the same thing, like I lost my complete file of pictures and information and entire presentation I had on it. And that's not the first time that's happened, you know. So these places, it's like they grow and become an
Mhm.
entire beast on their own.
This is
So,
true. Well, you know, thank you for coming on tonight. We're glad that it was able to work out.
Yep.
So,
All right, Trish Mo, thank you to our listeners. And Julia, wrap it
okay,
up.
so
yes, thank you.
thank you. Special thank you to Carnation for fully sponsoring the show. We love them, and please join us next Monday night. It's 8 p.m. EST on 105.3 FM from New Orleans.
Everyone, have a safe, great night. We'll catch you next week.
Good
Thank you.
night.